So now that I have my title box set up, let's go ahead and create a viewport so I can see the 2D fields that I created on my design layer. To do this, I'm going to come back over here to the navigation palette and click on Design Layers. Then I'm going to make the hardscapes my active design layer. And then next up, I need to create a crop. The crop will determine how much of my design layer is seen on my sheet layer. So I'm just going to come over here and use the rectangle tool. I'm going to draw a shape around all of the objects that I want to see on my sheet layer. And then it doesn't matter what this shape looks like because I'm going to come up here under View and go Create Viewport. And then it's going to open up this Create Viewport dialog box. The first option to pay attention to here is Create on Layer. I only have one sheet layer at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this viewport assigned to sheet layer 1, which is lesson 2.2. But if I had multiple sheet layers or I wanted to create a new sheet layer, I could do that right here. Then I have an option to create a drawing label. And usually I go ahead and I deselect the drawing label, but I'm going to leave it in so that I can show you how to remove that if you accidentally include one and you want to get rid of it. Further down, you can modify the drawing number as well as the drawing title. I'm going to skip those for now. Also, I have a scale option. And if you'll remember from the lecture about scale, it's the scale of the viewport that really matters. And so this is a bad example because this isn't a large property, but you're either going to want to stick to either a 1/8 inch scale for like a full-size property or a 1/4 inch scale if it's just for the front yard. Those are the two most common options that you're going to use. Let's go ahead and see what a 1/4 inch scale will look like for this drawing. Everything else looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then you can see that that 1/4 inch scale actually worked out pretty well. This is my viewport, and I can see that by looking over here in the Object Info palette that that's a viewport that I have selected. And right now, if I click over here in the navigation palette on the sheet layers, I can see that this lesson 2.2 has automatically become my active layer in my file. First, I'm going to reposition this so it's in the center of my sheet layer. And to do that, I'm just going to come over here to the box position. I'm going to click the center right there. And then under this field for X and Y, I'm going to go ahead and change both of those numbers to 0. And then it's just automatically going to line it up nicely for me. Remember when we created the viewport, there was an option to include a drawing title. This is what the drawing title looks like. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click for the context menu, and then I'm going to click on Edit Annotations. At this point, you can see that that drawing label is already selected over here in the Object Info palette. Just hit either delete or backspace, and that'll remove it from your file, and you can exit the viewport annotations. There are a lot of edits that I can make over here in the Object Info palette after I've created my viewport. For instance, remember we imported it in as a 1/4 inch scale. Let's look at what a 1/8 inch scale would look like instead. There we go. So it reduced it quite a bit. So you can always come back and play with scale after the fact to make sure that you've got the right scale selected. The other thing that I want you to know about viewports over here is that we have a button for both layers and classes. And this is really valuable because it means that I can turn certain layers and classes off. Now in this file that I'm demoing off of, I only have one design layer over here. So I'm going to come and make a quick edit to this. I'm going to use my Select Similar tool, and I'm going to select all of the text that I added to my file. And I'm going to create a new design layer. And I'm going to call that design layer text. And then over here, down here under creation options for the viewport visibility, I can make the decision whether or not I want the text design layer to be visible or invisible on existing viewports. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to visible. And then I'm going to click OK. And all of my text disappeared, and that's because my layer options is set to active only. If I come and I change this to show snap modify others, then I can go ahead and see my text as well as my hardscapes at the same time. And the reason that I went through the trouble to separate the text from the hardscapes is let's go back to our sheet layer, zoom out there. So I currently have my viewport selected, and what I can do is I can come over here to the Object Info palette for that viewport and click on Layers. And then I can go ahead and I can change the visibility for that text design layer from visible to invisible. and then click OK. And now it's removed the text from my viewport. And that is one thing that makes sheet layers and viewports so invaluable, is that it allows us to display our objects from our design layers to communicate different things about our designs. We haven't covered classes yet. We're going to cover those in the future. But just know that classes work the same way that layers work in a viewport. So those are the basic operations and settings that you need in order to use a viewport in your file.